to everyone who is on the line, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for attending today's virtual meeting. It's clear that these are indeed extraordinary and difficult and challenging times for all of us. COVID-19 has impacted everybody, and I'm just hopefully that everyone will be taking the necessary precautions and that we all stay healthy during this difficult time. I also want to say thank you to staff at Waterfront Toronto who have been continuing beyond the call of duty to continue to work so hard during these challenging times and to help us continue to move forward, not only with Sidewalk, but the other matters that continue to be on our agenda. Just to remember, as we go through, we are recording, and that is because we normally would like to invite the public to attend the meeting, but obviously that's not possible. So the public will have the opportunity to hear and see those that are on video during this meeting. Having said that, I would now move into the meeting and ask for a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Steve, I'll move it. It's Jeannie.
I'll second.
I'll
Great, thank you, thank you. So now that we've had that, is there any discussion? Can I have all in favor, I presume?
Aye.
In favor.
yes.
Okay. The second thing is that we always do, of course, is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. So today's agenda covers a number of topics, including the receipt of the quarterly CEO report and committee chair reports. There is a capital approval request that we'll hear from David Kirsten later on, as well as an update of the current state of discussions relating to the Quayside project. Before we even get to that, however, I do want to extend my thanks to all those who participated in the public sessions that were held on February 29th. Management and staff did put a tremendous amount of effort. There was great feedback from those in attendance, and these will lead to invaluable assistance to us as we move forward and decide whether or not to move forward with the Sidewalk Labs proposal. So moving on now to the consent agenda. One matter that does require approval is the minutes of the open session of January 23rd. So I'd like to have a motion to approve the January 23rd, 2020 board meeting open session minutes.
Chris,
So moved.
Right.
Jack.
Okay, all in favor? Great.
aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Now, I would take the other items in the consent agenda as taken as read, unless either any one of the committee chairs or the CEO want to highlight any aspect of these reports, or if there are any questions from the board. So George or any of the chairs, do you want to make any comment?
The only thing on the, if I can just on the CEO report, obviously Steve's already recognized the public consultation. I thought it went very well. We'll have a little bit of report back later in the agenda. Obviously, a lot of our focus has been on the COVID-19 and staff have been fantastic. We've been working remotely. We had a digital review panel session with about 50 people online yesterday and went very well. Maybe, Steve, with your permission, I'll just ask David to give a quick update on what we've been doing to mitigate the risk of any stoppage in our construction on the Quayside project, working both with the city and the province.
Okay, great.
All right, David, can you jump in?
Sorry, just getting off mute. So we've been in touch with the levels of government and are coordinating with the province and the city on responses. We have identified for the city a number of permits and approvals that we require in the short term, so over the next 6 to 8 weeks, which have been made somewhat more difficult with the cities going to really non-essential or suspending all non-essential services. The city are still working. Those that are able are working from home, and we're having very good success with our counterparts there in ensuring that we're able to continue to obtain the permits that we require. We are also working with the contractor. We have had a number of issues identified. One of our bridge constructor material that they require is coming from overseas, from Europe, and may or may not be impacted, but they've put us on notice that there's a potential that material could be delayed. We had one of our trades actually left the site on Monday. They are back working and have been back working for the rest of the week, and we are obviously keeping on a daily basis, keeping track of what's happening on site. Latest risk, and this risk has been added to our risk register as an actual risk at this point. The latest issue that we are working through is an issue related to some of the crews come from the U.S., and with the Quarantine Act, we need to determine whether or not those crews would be deemed essential workers or not essential workers, because if they're not essential workers, they can't cross the border.
So far, Steve, I think we've been operating fairly well. We're going to have to monitor as further declarations and clarifications come forward. But David, it'd be fair to say that so far we're operationally still functional.
We are still functional, maybe not moving quite as quickly as we were a week and a half ago, but all trades are still working. As are, by the way, the consultants.
So Steve, I would just, open it up for questions. If anybody has any other questions on the CEO report, given the agenda, I think I'd rather focus on the other items, but I'll take any questions.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
you're good.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to turn this, make sure I'm doing this properly. Okay, so then thank you for bringing us that to our attention. A little concerned about budgeting, but I think we'll worry about that at a different time. But at this point, George, should we move on to the capital approval for the Lakeshore Bridge?
Yeah, and I'm going to turn that over to David.
Okay, David, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. As soon as I know puts up the presentation, which should be right about now, we'll get started.
Yeah, it should be in the appendix there.
Yeah, I see it. There we go. We go to the next page. I know I'll have to move you along. So the may want to make that a bit smaller. There we go. So our objectives today to update the board on the Lakeshore Boulevard East bridge work and public realm work that is the subject of this capital approval, to provide an update on the current status of the project.
Is now joining.
To obtain approval from the board to proceed with the work that we're referring to, which is pre-construction work or design work for an expanded Lakeshore Bridge and Boulevard work that I'll describe shortly, and to obtain board approval to add the project to the 5-year plan. Next, Dina. Just note that this project is not included in the 5-year plan. This is a project that has developed in the last several months with the City of Toronto and through the Portland's Flood Protection Project, and the Farm Committee did review and is recommending for approval to the board this work. So existing conditions configuration You can see here, Don River comes down, flows underneath Lakeshore Boulevard and the Gardner, and then makes its right turn into the Keating Channel. Let's move on to the next one, I know. Under the Portlands project, in order to provide flood protection, we need to widen the Don River and deepen the Don River north of and through Lakeshore Boulevard to create a sediment debris management and removal area, and so that we can relocate dredging from the Keating Channel north of Lakeshore. That involves lengthening the existing Lakeshore Bridge, essentially adding 2 bays to it that I'll describe with some drawings momentarily.
Is now joining.
And then we construct some flow control weirs that are a requirement for ensuring that the river and the other outlets operate properly. All of which is to be complete for 2024. The Gardner East EA, which we are also involved with the city, goals as indicated here. Of import or note, however, that the Gardner also requires work to be done to the Lakeshore Bridge. While we are lengthening it as part of the the Portlands Flood Protection Project, under the Gardner project, the bridge has to be widened to accommodate some additional traffic, both vehicular, pedestrian, and cycling traffic. Additionally, the ramps that lead from Lakeshore Boulevard to the Gardner, from east of the Don River, over the Don River, are to be removed as part of the Gardner East EA project, and then the Gardner Don Valley ramps get moved to the north. So, next slide. This just shows the modifications that we are doing as part of the Portlands flood protection. So you can see the river is to be widened. Excuse me. And then the bridge shows 4 bays. The 2 easternmost bays, bays 1 and 2, currently exist, and we will be constructing bays 3 and 4, and then excavating out below that bridge to provide for the additional width for the river. For the Gardner, you can see that the proposed Gardner ramps move to the north above the sediment management area, and although it doesn't show clearly on this, the ramps to and from the Gardner that currently go over the Lakeshore Bridge get removed as part of the Gardner project. Next. So I've really talked about these, what the requirements of each project are. What we're looking at now is consolidating, combining a portion of the Gardner project, specifically the removal of the Gardner ramps, with our projects. So we would remove the Gardner ramps, we would both widen and lengthen the Lakeshore Bridge in one sequence, in one program, rather than having to lengthen it now and then widen it in the future. And at the same time, we would be doing the additional work, public realm work, on Lakeshore Boulevard between Logan and the Don River. So that's what this project is. This is a scope change to the Portlands Flood Protection Project. We would be adding work that is currently within the city's responsibility as part of the Gardner project. Next one, Menno. There are a couple of reasons that we are recommending to do this work. One is around risk management. Constructing underneath the Gardner ramps is both difficult because of the headroom restrictions that they generate, and also somewhat dangerous. We would, in order to do our work with the ramps in place, we would have to underpin, excavate below and underpin those ramps essentially while the Gardner was still operational. So from a risk management perspective, it's quite a risky venture, and also costly. The main reasons for the work are therefore to remove the risk of working under the Gardner ramps, and to enable us to actually reconstruct Lakeshore Bridge in one go, rather than lengthening it over the course of a couple of years now, and then the Gardner team widening it over the course of a couple of years when that project is going to start, which is probably in the 2023, 24, 25 area. We are looking at with the city to do this all in one project to reduce the amount of travel and traffic disruption that is generated because of the work that has to happen. This drawing shows the work that is required for Lakeshore Gardner. So you can see that the orange parts are where the Gardner would have to, or the Gardner work would have to happen in the future. We would be doing the darker gray work as part of the Portland's flood protection, which is extending the rail bridge and then extending the existing Lakeshore Bridge by 2 bays. In several years' time, the Gardner team would then have to come in, expand that new bridge between the between the two sections of bridge, as well as north and south, and then rebuild the existing bridge because it's reached essentially the end of its service life. Next. Just another view that shows the existing ramps and where they are over the Gardner. You can see that one of the ramps is actually quite low. It comes up and then stays at a just above the existing Lakeshore Bridge and runs right over Lakeshore Boulevard. So that creates a headroom issue for us in trying to construct the new bridge and doing the work that we're doing. So what we're looking to do is demolish those ramps prior to our starting the work on the Lakeshore Bridge once the construction starts, and then allowing us to do the bridge without the risk of the Gardner overhead. So 2 phases of work, proposed to be 2 phases. First phase is pre-construction work, and that's what we're looking for approval on today. The scope of that work is to get design, traffic modeling, or traffic mitigation plans, risk and approvals, costs, and schedule all fixed between now and December 2020, and then go for council approval to proceed with the construction, to get the funding for the construction, proceed with the construction. We would also come back to the board in the fall with the same information and obtain approval from the board to proceed with construction. That construction work will then begin next year and go through 2020 into 2024. We have negotiated a delivery agreement with the City of Toronto. It's being finalized. We're coordinating with the city to have that executed. I will say that the COVID-19 has caused a little bit of a hiccup there, but we'll work with the city to get through that. We are working through approvals that we require, design review panel, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Transport Canada approvals, and the consultant team is fully engaged. It is the Portland's team who are engaged and working on to work on the design, risk management, estimating, and scheduling. Next. So we require capital approval because this work is greater than 5 million. So our capital approval policy requires us to obtain the board's approval to invest beyond 5 million. Generally speaking, we would obtain capital approval after we reach 30% completion of design. However, in this case, the design itself is more expensive than the 5 million, or the investment is greater than the 5 million. So we will be back for further capital approval on construction, and we will be coming back beyond 30%. We will have 90% design and 90% estimates completed before we come back to the board for the next approval. So the current approval being requested is 16 million, as shown on this page, which didn't translate into PDF quite as well as it could have. But essentially, it's design, soft costs. There are no construction costs involved in this project. We've got a bit of contingency. The risks on the design side are rather minimal. So the total funding, and this funding is being provided by the city, is $16 million. Some of the risks we do have is we have to obtain regulatory approvals as well as board and city approvals to proceed with the actual construction project. So this work is preparatory for that. There may also need to be a minor amendment to the EA, given that the work for the EA may be split into two phases, part of which we will undertake and then the balance of which the city will undertake. We've looked at the project relative to the corporation's risk appetite, which is moderate. The project is consistent with that level of risk, and in fact, the proposed project reduces the risk associated with the work that we would otherwise be doing on Lakeshore, on the Lakeshore Bridge with the Gardiner in place, which is somewhat quite a risky construction project due to the need to maintain the Gardiner while we're actually constructing the Gardiner or reconstructing the Gardiner foundations and constructing underneath the Gardiner ramps. And then I won't read the motion, but essentially it is that we're looking for approval to proceed with the work, subject to obtaining execution of the funding agreement with the city and subject to the board approving the addition of this work to the rolling 5-year plan. Any questions?
So the only comment I'll make is just to remind everybody, this did go through farm as well.
So I just have one question. It's Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just in terms of the allocation of capital, my understanding was that, Waterfront was quite tight in terms of capital should we proceed with our smart city project. So given that this wasn't in the rolling plan, do we have sufficient capital available to execute on the program?
This is being funded separately by the city, Chris. So there will be additional funding provided by the city to do this work.
Yeah, so it's outside of our budget.
Yeah, actually, Chris, that was my question, but I saw David pointed that out. I was wondering whether it saves us any money because of what was happening before, because now the city's taking this on, but I'm not sure where all the numbers lie between what was before and what is now.
So 16 million, just for clarity, the 16 million we're approving?
The 60 million is just for design work for the expanded project. So under the Portland's flood protection project, we are responsible for and have budget for designing the widened river, including the lengthening of the Lakeshore Bridge. So that's part of our budget on Portland's flood protection, and that includes the construction cost for extending that bridge. Okay. There, in fact, would be some savings where we don't have to underpin the existing Gardiner ramps. Those savings will be reinvested into this project. So essentially, the money that we're the budget that we're currently carrying for Lakeshore Bridge, we will expend that as part of this larger piece of work. It won't actually save us money in the Portland's flood protection, but there will be work that we don't have to do because we're doing this additional work for and in conjunction with the city.
So it's revenue neutral to Waterfront.
It is absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and sorry, Chris, I had one question. I was just concerned in light of COVID and timing, in terms of the dates of these approvals, do you think they're realistic, what you've presented in terms of how difficult it is to get things done today?
Well, the approvals, the secondary approvals that we need, apart from getting the city's delivery agreement, and we're working with the city to expedite that, to find a way to expedite that. The rest of the approvals aren't required till the fall. So,
Hopefully.
Hopefully we're out of this by then.
Okay.
If we're not, we've got bigger problems than this project, I think.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions?
I'm happy to move it, Steve. It's Jack.
Okay, great. Any seconder?
Chris, second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. At this juncture, I'd like to have a motion, if we could, to go into closed session to discuss items 7 to 9 of the agenda. And
So moved.
thank you. Seconder?
Sure.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so thank you, everybody. We're now back into open session. The meeting is being recorded. We need a couple of motions to be passed. One is to move a motion to approve the January 23rd board meeting closed session minutes. And could I have a mover and seconder for that?
Moved, Patrick.
Jack is seconding.
And then again, as a result of our discussion at the board meeting this morning, there is a motion to amend the plan development agreement to extend the deadline for approval of the MIDP from May 20th, 2020 to June 25th, 2020. And can I have a motion with respect to, or motion to approve that resolution?
I'll move that, Steve. It's Kevin.
I'll
Thank you,
second
Kevin.
that, Wendy.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. These are difficult and unusual times. The good news is I just checked, the stock market's up a little bit again today so far. So hopefully this crisis will pass and there'll be some light at the end of the tunnel. Again, I appreciate staff and all your hard work, and the members of the board and committees for all your hard work in these difficult times. And just wish everybody all the best in the next few weeks. And I would now declare the business of the meeting over. So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. Jack.
Great. Okay, the meeting is terminated. And again, thank you everybody for your time this morning.